Epstein, the narcissist triangulating girl versus girl. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. People are appliances to the narcissist. They are commodities that are there to be utilized by the narcissist for the pursuit of the prime aims. They must be controlled, provide fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. As per my book, Fuel, people are categorized into various sources, tertiary, secondary, and primary. You are there to serve the narcissist's needs. As part of this, the narcissist manipulates, and a common manipulation utilized by the narcissist is triangulation. The narcissist will triangulate one appliance with maybe another appliance, with an object or an event. Where there is triangulation with another appliance, another person, this can be done favorably. For example, the narcissist says to you, "Thank goodness I'm with you and away from my ex-wife. She was a pig and a horrible person." Thus, you are in effect praised for not being a pig and not being a horrible person. And thus you're expected to tell the narcissist how thrilled you are to be with them, thus demonstrating that you're under control and that you provide fuel. Of course, once you enter the sustained devaluation, the position will shift. "I don't know why I got with you. I should have stayed with my wife. She was wonderful, kind, caring, beautiful." In other words, you're not wonderful, or kind, or caring, or beautiful. Not only does this insult you in the instance, causing you therefore to react, providing fuel, but it also causes you to become confused. But hitherto, he criticized his wife and said I was wonderful, and now it's the other way around. I don't understand what's going on. This is all part of the mindfuckery that the narcissist engages in order to keep you under control. For if the sands remain shifting, it's harder for you to get on a steady footing, and therefore you're easier to control. Unsurprisingly, deceased narcissist and serial sex offender Jeffrey Epstein also engaged in triangulation, and he did so in relation to the women that he manipulated and that he abused. As per a report in the Times, Reena O had mixed emotions when she heard that Virginia Giuffre had died. They had known each other in the weird and twisted world of Jeffrey Epstein in the early 2000s, but by the time of her death, their relationship had descended into outright hostility. I was sad, but at the same time I felt like I could finally breathe, like she's not going to try to ruin my life anymore, she says. Pausing there, the fact that there was acrimony between these two intimate partner secondary sources of Jeffrey Epstein is actually quite a common occurrence. That rather than them realise who the true problem is, namely the narcissist, that appliances often end up being pitted against one another, much to the amusement, delight, and satisfaction of the narcissist. By keeping you fighting one another, it means that you're not threatening the control of the narcissist. By criticising the other to the narcissist, you're providing fuel. You're showing that you're under the narcissist's control. And naturally, the fact that the narcissist is able to pit two people who are the victims of abuse against one another rather than against them is a demonstration of the power of the narcissist also. Since Giuffre's memoir was published last month, her words have been front-page news around the world. For many people, she was a hero, the woman who exposed a sexual abuse network involving some of the world's most powerful men. However, there have long been questions about Giuffre's reliability as a witness, and O, while recognising the terrible adversity she went through, is one of her most vocal critics. O claimed Giuffre had twisted events that happened in her own life and in some cases made them up. In 2021, she sued Giuffre for defamation. Giuffre countersued, and a protracted legal battle rumbled right up to Giuffre's suicide in April. Accordingly, Jeffrey Epstein, who died in August 2019, was still able to have an impact upon these two women from beyond the grave, whereby the events that were occasioned by him resulted in legal action between the two of them. Weeks before Giuffre took her own life, a New York judge had swept aside Giuffre's attempt to quash a sexual assault case O had lodged against her. It was looking increasingly likely that Epstein's most famous accuser was going to have to answer questions in court. O has no idea how much this was weighing on Jeffrey before her death, but she thought there was a momentum building. There were cracks building, and there were cracks in her credibility, she says. The clash began in 2019, when documents from Jeffrey's civil action against Ghislaine Maxwell were unsealed by order of the US Court of Appeals. The release included sections of a previously unpublished book written by Jeffrey, The Billionaire's Playboy Club. O, who was living in New Jersey with her husband and 2 sons, was eager to read it. She logged onto her computer and skimmed the pages until she found a reference to someone who sounded a lot like her. According to Jeffrey, Reena, an unusual-looking woman of Asian descent, was to help Jeffrey massage Epstein. Jeffrey expected me to walk her through her duties, Jeffrey wrote. They all had a steam shower. Reena took instructions well and began to massage him too. Over several pages, Jeffrey recounted how the situation between the 3 of them heated up. Epstein requested the girls start kissing. Then Reena introduced me to my first taste of S&M, Jeffrey wrote. The book suggests that those interactions took place repeatedly over a period of months, with Reena becoming an official. Reena considered herself a dominatrix. She liked bondage, whipping, hitting, and eventually cutting her sex partner with little sharp knives, Jeffrey explained, before detailing how Reena would end their sessions together by hitting her across the face with the back of her hand. At home in New Jersey, O stared at the screen with a sense of creeping dread. She recognized the settings Jeffrey had described. She recognized some of the people too, but that was where the familiarity ended. The whole thing was made up, she claims. O was a 21-year-old art student in New York when she met Epstein. She'd just broken up with her boyfriend and was devastated. Her parents, who were of South Korean descent, did not support her art career, and she was broke. A friend, Lisa Phillips, offered to introduce her to a wealthy contact. He owns a private jet and a private island, and he's an art collector, O recalls Phillips saying. I was like, yes, he can buy all my artwork. In June 2000, she arrived at Epstein's enormous New York townhouse with her portfolio, dreaming of finding patrons like the Rockefellers or the Gettys. She and Phillips were greeted by a secretary, who ushered them into Epstein's study. It was a huge room, O recalls, and Epstein was behind a desk with 2 computer monitors and had stock market data on the screen. They chatted. Then O showed him her portfolio. When they had finished talking through the pieces, he led us into the little red room and something took place, O says. She does not want to go into detail, but says it was a sexual encounter involving her, Phillips, and Epstein. Note already that Epstein is triangulating her sexually with another woman. Neither of them thought much of it at the time. Back then, I just thought that he was a polygamist, just a weird, unusual, and very rich man who had a constant need for sexual gratification. Neither of us took the relationship that seriously, she says. Phillips says she does not recall the encounter at the townhouse at all. Almost as soon as O had left, Epstein's secretary called her and said he would like to see her again. On her second visit, O was taken straight up to the Red Room, where Epstein was waiting with another girl. He told the other girl to give him a massage, while O sat beside him, and he talked to her about her career. He said, I think you're really talented, flattery, and I think you should be in school. He explained that he often paid for talented young people to further their education. Triangulation promised gain. He wanted to offer her a scholarship to do a bachelor's degree at the School of Visual Arts in the city. He had already picked the course. O listened, stunned. Was this really happening? She left the house elated. The logistics of this scholarship were left to his secretary, and O started the course soon afterwards. Meanwhile, she was invited back again. This is when it gets creepier, she says. He said to me, you're going to be part of Babylon, grandiosity, a reference to the biblical city which represented idolatry and sin. He said, You are going to be part of a harem, and you are going to be a favourite. Triangulation with the other girls. They went to the Red Room, where another sexual encounter took place, and before she left, he gave her 2 illustrated books about sultans, who had hundreds of concubines. They emphasized the importance of hierarchy within the harem, triangulation with object, and also conditioning in relation to the idea of that she would be placed in a harem and she would have a hierarchical position within it. The way he reeled her in was cunning, she says. It wasn't in exchange for your sexual services. It was, I'm going to pay for your college course. It was more, you are special in this hierarchy inside the harem. You are privileged and you need to be educated. He seemed to be offering himself not just as a patron, but as a teacher. She would be invited to Epstein's house about once a week when he was in New York. They would always talk for an hour or more about art and ideas before some sort of sexual encounter in the Red Room. O stops me when I ask if they always had sex. She explains Epstein was a serial masturbator. His genitals were deformed, and he mostly liked to watch girls together. Triangulation. Also, the fact that he was a serial masturbator links to the issue of control. He, in effect, is directing the scene, putting the 2 girls together, triangulating them with one another, and wielding his power over them. As time went on, Epstein would push her boundaries. He would ambush her by having another girl waiting in the Red Room when she arrived. Triangulation. I was very uncomfortable. That was not something I wanted to happen, she says, and that was part of the thrill for him. When she went along with it, he would reward her with some act of generosity. Soon, she was living in an apartment he had provided for her in New York. Bribery. He also pushed her to bring girls with her. She did this on 3 occasions, 2 of which ended in a sexual encounter. Triangulation again. Another got a scholarship to New York University. O says she profoundly regrets bringing anyone to Epstein's house. You will see the modus operandi of Epstein, whereby this triangulation not only allows him to triangulate them with one another in a favourable way, allowing him to receive fuel, to assert control as he directs these 2 individuals to do what he wants, but it also allows him to create a chain, a conveyor belt of bringing other girls who are being brought in by the initial person that he is manipulating and abusing. This not only translates to a considerable assertion of control and power over that individual by getting them to bring in fresh victims for him, it also adds another layer of control because it makes that individual potentially culpable by virtue of saying, you were the one that recruited them into this harem, not me. You did it. And therefore, that has potential ramifications for the initial victim. Similar to the way that Jeffrey brought further girls in, O has done so. This reinforces Epstein's power, and this triangulation also allows him to create some culpability on the part of the likes of Jeffrey, O, and other girls, whereby they may believe that they have engaged in something which could result in criminal or civil action against them, enabling them to be subjected to, in a sense, blackmail by Epstein, by Maxwell as his lieutenant. O knew logically that there must be other women in this harem, but she never met them aside from an occasional massage therapist, and had no real sense of what was happening outside of the New York house. O first met Jeffrey in the autumn of 2000 in New York. Epstein had invited her to the house and was surprised to discover that it wasn't a massage room situation. Instead, he said that he wanted to introduce her to a friend from Florida. Jeffrey was 17. O assumed that she was the daughter of someone he knew. Again, this is indicative of the further triangulation which has taken place. This was also the first time she met Maxwell, who stuck her head around the door and said, "Oh, you're Reena. You're all he ever talks about." Triangulation of Maxwell with Reena. and also Triangulation by Maxwell, triangulating O with Epstein. Maxwell asked O to take Jeffrey shopping, triangulation, which she did. Jeffrey wanted to buy a schoolgirl skirt, so she took her to St. Mark's Place, not thinking too much of it. They were in fashion at the time. Jeffrey was shy and timid, and I kept wondering the whole time, why am I taking you shopping? Afterwards, she dropped her back to Epstein's house and left. O says she never encountered Andrew Mountbatten Windsor during her time with Epstein and did not hear about him until years later. The next time she and Jeffrey met was in Florida, where Epstein had invited O to join him for a week. Jeffrey was at the house every day, sometimes bringing other girls with her. More triangulation. In New York, Epstein was discreet. In Florida, he wasn't. There were pictures of semi-nude girls lined up on his desk, facing outwards towards the incoming guests. Triangulation with object. O was appalled to see one of herself. Objectification, lack of boundary recognition. Occasionally, people would recognize me from that photo, and it was humiliating and embarrassing, she says. Lack of emotional empathy towards her. It was in Florida that O realized that Maxwell and Epstein had a relationship of some sort. Maxwell slept in his bedroom there, unlike in New York. Maxwell seemed envious, O recalled, and Epstein liked to provoke her. He would say things like, "Look at Reena's skin, she has the most beautiful skin," triangulating Maxwell with O. But he was also boorish. On one occasion they went to Mar-a-Lago, where Maxwell was playing tennis. He insulted her, and she insulted him back. Two narcissists threatening one another's need for control. They were going back and forth, Jeffrey laughing in her face, and I was like, wow, these people are psychotic. Then Epstein started making lewd sexual actions behind O's back. I thought, if he's going to behave this way in public, I don't know if I want to be seen with him. On another occasion, when they were out with friends, he sent her to Barnes & Noble to buy a book about sex slavery. He told her something shocking. O says so shocking that she still won't repeat it. He swore her to secrecy. Notice the power that this still has over her. Epstein's been dead 6 years, and yet she still won't repeat it. Back in New York, O got a job in fashion PR. She rented out the flat that Epstein had provided for her and moved in with a flatmate. I became less available for Jeffrey, she says. The final time she saw Jeffrey was in the Red Room in New York. It was one of the occasions when she had brought a friend with her. Triangulation again. I knocked on the door, and then I opened the door and walked in and froze. I knew immediately that this was an ambush. What happened was by now predictable. She claimed she was ambushed by 2 females at the same time, while Epstein watched. Last impression I had of Virginia was this girl had turned into one of the girls I hated the most, one of the massage therapists who ambushed me in that room. Her relationship with Epstein ended a few months later. She had been working on a sculpture, a monumental bronze which was unveiled outside Georgetown University in Washington. O came back to the city on a high and agreed to go to Epstein's house. She thought he'd be pleased for her. I ended up getting punished that day, she says. I asked what she meant. It was a violent sexual act, she said. I see it as an act of rape. It's not something I consented to, O adds. There was no exchange of words when it was finished. It was pretty obvious I was never going to see him again. She was evicted from her flat soon afterwards. Sexual assault, lack of emotional empathy, assertion of control, removal of privilege by eviction from flat. By the time O read The Billionaire Playboys Club, she'd been dealing with the fallout of the relationship for years. In the months after the alleged assault, she'd relapsed into an eating disorder. I didn't want to be attractive to men anymore. I felt so ashamed. I didn't want men to look at me in a sexual way, she says. Decades on, having had therapy, O married, had 2 children, and built a career in food media. She told her husband that she'd been abused by a very rich man, but never told him who. The first stories about Epstein abusing girls in Florida started coming out in 2007, then started up again in 2019, when the details emerged of the sweetheart deal he'd struck in Florida, which protected him and some of his aides from prosecution in exchange for pleading guilty to solicitation with a minor. O started posting anonymous messages online about her time in his world and became convinced that Epstein or his associates were threatening her. She had a psychotic episode and ended up in hospital. Then came the unsealing of Jeffrey's memoir. She cast me as a perpetrator, and the whole thing was made up. The only thing that is true is the shopping trip, O says. In the months afterwards, she agreed to an interview with an American journalist, but it turned out to be a podcast about recruiters framed around Jeffrey and another girl, and cast O as the villain. O claimed she was set up. What followed was vicious. I was getting harassed by people. I was getting stalked by people. I was getting a lot of hate messages. A row between the two women exploded on social media, and each accused the other of abuse. Note that this is following the demise of Epstein, that two of his victims continue to be triangulated by him post his death to behave in this fashion. O volunteered an interview to the FBI, which later confirmed that it viewed her as a victim of Epstein and not a recruiter. She submitted a claim to the Victim Compensation Fund, asking to be given the equivalent sum of the course Epstein had paid for and used to control her. When the money came through in October 2021, she used the funds to start a legal case against Jeffrey for defamation valued at $10 million. Jeffrey sued back, arguing that it was her First Amendment right to say everything she had, and she maintained that O was not a victim, but a girlfriend who changed her story to benefit from the compensation fund. Note the interesting impact that this has had upon Jeffrey. Rather than see O as somebody like her, a victim, she sees her as a recruiter, but distinguishes that she isn't one, even though there might be evidence to support that that was the case, that she was a recruiting victim herself. She accused O of sexual assault, claiming to have suffered serious psychological, sexual and physical abuse at the hands of defendant O. O sued again, using the Adult Survivors Act in New York and saying Jeffrey had sexually assaulted her during the final interaction at the townhouse. Much of the evidence put forward by O's team has focused on the scar of Jeffrey's leg, which O's medical experts claim was almost certainly not caused by a knife. Jeffrey's credibility has been questioned over the years, most notably after she dropped her sexual abuse case against the lawyer Alan Dershowitz in 2019, acknowledging that she may have made a mistake. Other victims of Epstein spoke privately of having their experiences dramatically redrawn by Jeffrey. However, they were afraid to speak out publicly, concerned about going against public opinion, undermining the cases against Epstein and Maxwell, or becoming targets for Jeffrey's high-profile legal team. It was also true that Jeffrey was herself a victim of smear campaigns. Both Epstein and Brian Basham, a friend of Maxwell, hired professionals to dig dirt on her. O and Jeffrey met face-to-face for the last time in 2023 at the World Trade Center offices of Jeffrey's lawyer, where Jeffrey was giving out-of-court testimony in the defamation case. O says, "I wanted to see her in person. I wanted to see if she would lie to my face, and she did." O recalls her becoming extremely angry. "People don't understand that Virginia was a bully," she says. "She created this entire Survivor Sisters group. It was like a clique of girls that were part of her sisterhood, and anyone she didn't like was excluded." O is horrified by the public unravelling of Jeffrey in her final days, where she posted on social media images of herself bruised after a road accident, claiming her kidneys were failing and that she had days to live. She was isolated, living alone in that farmhouse without the husband and kids, and to post all those things in social media just to me does not seem like a person who is completely here. If there was a mental health team supporting her, then they didn't do their job. O is in therapy, supported by a fund secured for victims by the former Director General of the US Virgin Islands as part of their suit against Epstein's bank, JP Morgan. Victims are entitled up to $50,000 worth of support a year. The legal case is not over. According to O's lawyer, all the legal proceedings have been paused until an estate trustee is appointed as a party in place of Jeffrey. A date has been set for this month. Kathleen Thomas and Gillian P. Ross, lawyers for Jeffrey, said, "We're moving to dismiss this case against her because we maintain, and always maintained as our client did, that she was sexually abused by Reena O. The case is stayed until someone steps in on behalf of Virginia." As soon as a trustee is appointed, O plans to proceed with her claim. She believes it's the right thing to do. "My children unfortunately have read these stories," she says. "It is not her right to have done that. She has caused me a lot of harm, but I am reclaiming who I am." A detailed report from the Times about the experiences of Reena O and the involvement of Virginia Giuffre, which demonstrates that both women, and in particular O, as it's her recollection, were triangulated with other women by Epstein, as you know, for the purposes of him asserting control over them, for drawing fuel, for getting the residual benefit of sexual gratification. But it is also noteworthy that the impact of the narcissist's behaviour upon these two women is such that they've ended up in litigation against one another, that they have continued to be triangulated by Jeffrey Epstein, even though he is now dead. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.